A real estate development company with far-right ties has been buying up large swaths of land in rural Kentucky in an attempt to offer a refuge from woke ideals and a promised return to Christendom.
The whole point of it is to plant a flag and say this small town is where our people are gathering.
But who are their people? With Christian nationalism on the rise in America,
we're all committed to the cause of retaking this country.
Movements like American Redoubt, and the history of Christian extremist settlements being built, ones like Elohim City, which had direct ties to the Oklahoma City bombing.
A place of refuge for extremist anti-government ideas and racism justified by twisted scriptures.
There's a bit of a fervor that has been made about what is going to happen in Burkesville, where this company Ridge Runner is buying up this land. What exactly are they looking to accomplish here? Will this settlement be a quiet Christian community? Will it be a breeding ground for extremist ideas? Or is this all just a simple right-wing grift?
The salvation of America is going to be Christian communities that are in the country.
The phrase white Christian nationalism has been in the headlines quite a bit recently.
You can call us extremists, you can call us domestic terrorists.
This is a war that we're in.
It's just going to take the right people who are inspired, help build a particular kind of community.
Christian nationalism has rose to prominence in recent years, and it's attracted more and more adherents, some looking to move to communities that share the ideology. A lot of Christians might see this and think, why is that a problem? Several have made such comments in the teaser for this video, but texts like Stephen Wolf's The Case for Christian Nationalism tell a different story. A critical review on the Christian website The Gospel Coalition breaks down what the message is. Ethnicities shouldn't mix, that heretics can be killed, that violent revolution is already justified, and that what our nation needs is a charismatic Caesar-like leader to raise our consciousness and galvanize the will of the people. I grew up Catholic, and this isn't really the Christianity I remember. It feels that as America gets more progressive, these kinds of movements grow and the ideas and the people around them get more extreme. When the Christian identity movement rose up in the 50s and 60s, it was in direct opposition to desegregation and a decade of democratic rule. When it pushed further ahead in the 70s and 80s, which spurred the creation of places like Hayden Lake, Idaho, the farm in northern Arkansas, and Elohim City in the backwoods of Oklahoma, it was on the back of the government's crackdown on extreme religious sects, white supremacist groups, and far-right ideas. It seems again now, with the country where it is, there's this fiery rhetoric and a retreat by certain sections of the right to ideological enclaves where they can practice their form of oppressive Christianity. This appears to be the case in the Northwest, where the American Redoubt movement has been pushing for this since 2011. The movement is bolstered by the ideas of people like Matt Shea, who distributed a manifesto which called for the killing of non-Christian men if a war were to occur and they did not agree to follow fundamentalist biblical law, and Chuck Baldwin, who is vehemently anti-Semitic and has appeared on a radio show syndicated by the white nationalist group Stormfront. While the language being used by those at Ridge Runner and its parent company New Founding certainly isn't as explosive as others, and they have stated in the past that they oppose the idea of Christian nationalism, their deep connections to far-right figures who harbor these extreme ideas and their support for Christian nationalist figureheads seem to tell a different story. Let me break it down for you. New Founding is run by this man, Nathaniel Fisher. Fisher is a firebrand for Christian and right-wing ideas.
Christians intuitively recognize that there's a problem here. This is a war that we're in.
And a bit of a paranoiac, always on his heels about the evil endeavors of the left.
The left is an existential threat to our country. They have committed acts of violence, and they will do it again. And they're going to do everything they can to neuter the people politically.
In interviews, he's reinforced this idea, refusing to shrug off being called far-right.
I found a piece by The Guardian where they referred to you as a far-right venture capitalist. Is that true?
I will not object to the accuracy of the term.
His associations seem like a fever dream of a who's who on the extreme right. For starters, Fisher is a fellow of the Claremont Institute, a California-based think tank that has taken an apocalyptic view of America in recent years. In those years, the people in its sphere of influence have been talking to secession, saying in order to carry it out, they believe they need to use whatever they might need to, including paramilitaries. Claremont has been repeatedly analyzed over the last decade for its fall from grace as a source of conservative intellectual debate, to its current form as a polemicist rag laundering the ideas of conspiracy theorists like Jack Posobiec. You might think being a fellow doesn't necessarily mean much here, but I've been speaking with the source within their circles who wish to remain anonymous due to possible backlash, who claim that Claremont has been using Fisher's company New Founding as their lobbying arm to reactionary Christians. According to tax filings, Claremont also partly funds the secretive men's group Society for American Civic Renewal, known as SACR for short, in which Nate Fisher is the president of the Dallas-based lodge. SACR is ran by this man, Charles Haywood, who Fisher has said is an investor in New Founding.
Charles is an investor in our company, and he's someone I share a lot with in terms of that.
Haywood is a former shampoo magnate turned far-right conservative commentator whose opinions have caused a lot of alarm and a lot of blowback. He's been called batshit crazy by the American conservative and has spoken often about his desire to become a warlord in an armed patronage network. His men's organization's rhetoric has been called palingenetic ultranationalism, a fascist idea that proposes revolution as a means of national rebirth. Their website states they are seeking a civilizational renaissance and that they are building thriving communities of free citizens who will reclaim a humane vision of society while rebuilding the frontier conquering spirit of America. Sounds a little like Ridge Runner is proposing for their developments. Haywood himself has been creating his own compound, which he wrote will be impervious to anything but direct organized military attack, adding that it requires a group of men to make it work, what I call shooters, say 15 able-bodied, inadequately trained men. It seems his followers take this idea seriously. On Haywood's website, underneath his lengthy manifesto, you can find comments like this: "Listening to you has helped me. I could definitively muster about 15 men. We can arm another 150. Send me your address so we can pick a rallying point." As many on the right distanced themselves from him, including Glenn Beck, who called him a false prophet, Haywood was invited onto the New Founding podcast.
Now I lost my train of thought. We're talking about killing.
In a Twitter space in which Fisher was in attendance, Haywood argued that while it might not be ideal, that those on the right should cooperate with the hypothetical white nationalists who rose to power if they could in tandem with him defeat the left.
The goal of the right is to defeat the left. That's the only goal that matters, because the left is the enemy of mankind, and mankind cannot flourish until the left is defeated. But let's say a real white nationalist arose who had real political power, was able to get a significant percentage of the vote. You should cooperate with that person in order to destroy the power of the left.
The New Founding Haywood connection reveals a lot about what New Founding seems to be trying to do. While they mostly meter their words when speaking about their plans, Haywood has gone off script, fully embracing the kind of fiery language usually reserved for your David Koreshes and your James Ellisons. Despite this difference in tone, Fisher takes every opportunity to defend Haywood and the inflammatory things he writes and says.
Charles Haywood's a great thinker on a lot of this stuff. I think Charles has a lot of thoughtful ideas, and he's a very thoughtful person about these things.
He's prominently featured in the intro to the New Founding podcast alongside Donald Trump, Teddy Roosevelt, and Elon Musk. There's even a nod in the New Founding brand rail to him being the best of us.
The best of us are at risk of losing our jobs over vax mandates and pronouns.
It would appear their ideas don't necessarily differ, just their public language. On the other side of New Founding, and along with his father, seemingly the architect of Ridge Runner, is this man, Josh Abatoy. Abatoy and Fisher go hand in hand everywhere. They share the same ideologies and the same background. Abatoy has spent the last year going on podcast after podcast to launder the ideas he hopes to foster in this community.
You know, we're not going to let Appalachia get terraformed by liberals.
While railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, supposed neighborhoods, and the Southern Baptist Convention, which he thinks is becoming too woke. Not even the Christians are apparently Christian enough for him. Abatoy and Fisher run an online publication called The American Reformer, which has featured a wide variety of articles espousing far-right views. One, written by Matthew Pearson, outlined the ideas of Carl Schmitt, a German jurist, political theorist, and prominent member of the Nazi Party. Surprisingly, it's not the only article that features the ideas of the National Socialist. Schmitt even has his own tag on the American Reformer website. They've also published an article by Mike Sabo, which links to the ideas of Robert Hoyle, a man who has tweeted about the noble race and used the well-known Nazi phrase blood and soil. Hoyle has been accused of being a chemist. Manichaeism, for those who don't know, is an interpretation of Christianity, which believes God intended to separate people along tribal and ethnic lines. It is white supremacy with the twisted interpretation of the Bible as its architect. American Reformer also published a recent speech by the Heritage Foundation's president, Kevin Roberts. The Heritage Foundation is behind the 2025 project, which is also backed by the Claremont Institute. The project is a far-reaching conservative initiative that seeks to fundamentally reshape the federal government to advance a hardline conservative agenda if Republicans win the 2024 presidential election. Plans like these appear to be at the forefront of New Founding's ideology, which seems to be a takeover and reshaping of any institutions and their sites. American Reformers' pages are littered with Christian nationalist ideas, far-right views, and alarmist takes on America's current trajectory. Abitoy and Fisher have claimed these are all allowed to stir up political debate, but personally I wouldn't platform someone praising the ideas of a member of the Third Reich. Abitoy himself penned a piece for the publication First Things, in which he stated America is going to need a Protestant Franco, referring to the Spanish tyrant Francisco Franco, who ruled Spain with a repressive iron fist, in which concentration camps were established, forced labor and executions became common, and hundreds of thousands died. Not exactly the kind of leader you want in your nice, quiet, rural Kentucky community. The New Founding About page reads like a manifesto, making it very clear the community they want to build. They oppose DEI and ESG, state that left-wing ideology is anti-human, and that they are going to build something based on their beliefs, which, if following everything I've spoken about, would appear to be a utopia free of anyone outside of their identity. New Founding not only wants to bring with it the people, but the ideologically aligned businesses as well. Fisher, Abitoy, and New Founding have been investing in ammunition and military-grade body armor as of recent. The Guardian reported in September of last year that Fisher himself had acquired an Allen, Texas ammunition manufacturer and had been selling the munitions to the American government. Ridge Runner has even been advertising how much 5.56, the standard AR-15 round, you can shoot out in the holler without worry. They've partnered with companies like Armored Republic, which sells ballistic and body armor. Their CEO has said his mission is to honor Christ by equipping free men with the tools of liberty necessary to preserve God-given rights. It has made references to equipping 3% of Americans, a term also used by a violent anti-government militia group.
Armored Republic is dedicated to the mission of honoring Christ the King by providing at least 3% of the free men in America with the tools of liberty that are necessary to defend their God-given rights against tyrants and criminals.
Over on the New Founding YouTube page, you can listen to the hosts launder extreme ideas with various figureheads of the far right. Let me introduce you to the raw egg nationalist, whose book The Eggs Benedict Option was released by the white nationalist publisher Antelope Hill. Best known for its translations of historical works by literal Nazis, including a fitness manual for the Wehrmacht, and is consequently listed by the SPLC as an anti-Semitic hate group. Abitoy and Fisher's relationship with the raw egg nationalists has been analyzed by several in the past. My source sent me a whole folder of tweets he had screen capped over that time showing the kind of figure he is. In them, he references the popular white nationalist slogan 1488 and regularly tweets out HH, which is short for Heil Hitler. Despite all this, Fisher announced he'd be part of the founding team of one of their businesses, Kindred Harvest. New Founding's tight relationship with him and all of the people in their circle who flirt with these kind of ideas raises a lot of questions about what they stand for and what kind of people they may attract to any communities they want to build. Fisher and Abitoy have also been spending time with William Wolf, a former Trump senior official who has spoken unabashedly about carrying out the idea of Christian nationalism, stating it's a needed project of spiritual, cultural, and national renewal for the United States. While Abitoy and Fisher try to avoid the term, this article was, you guessed it, published on the American Reformer. He even appeared at a Jesus in Politics conference in October of last year, stating that we are getting close to the point where Christians will have to heed the call to arms.
And if we have ever lived in a point in time in American history since then that we could argue that now is a time to arms again, it is right, even though as Christians we seek peace, that when the enemy is pressed upon us, if we fail to heed the call to arms, then we are acting as cowards.
Here they are on the podcast Backwoods Belief talking about Ridge Runner with one another.
The intention is to have enough scale so that the conservative Christians have a presence on Main Square.
Josh said there's no paint by numbers here, that they're not parceling it up.
Was that a Freudian slip with William Wolfe, the avowed Christian nationalist, saying we when talking about this project? Fisher and Abitoy also have many connections to Stephen Wolfe, the man who wrote the controversial book, The Case for Christian Nationalism. They appear with him on podcasts and at events, and he's even a consistent contributor to the American Reformer as well. Like I said before, even if they try to act unaligned with an idea, it seems that there are a lot of people in the Abitoy-Fisher universe who wholeheartedly support it, Christian nationalism being a big one, which makes the next point all the more troubling. The source I've been speaking with told me that Abitoy and Fisher have been talking about their building of a micronation when in the company of like-minded individuals. If this is true, it would seem they've been taking pointers from their visits to Moscow, Idaho, where the Christ Church has made a vow to take over the town and make it their own. The church's leader, Doug Wilson, is well known as a controversial pastor for a number of things, including his views on slavery, his suggestion of execution for adultery, and for setting various things on fire while he denounces nuance and tells his people to be arsonists in the world.
We're supposed to be arsonists in the world.
His father, Jim Wilson, wrote books on strategic evangelism, relating it to the principles of war with titles like Weapons and Tactics and Taking Men Alive. Abitoy and Fisher appear to be taking place from these books and Doug Wilson's tactics and deploying them on their own ventures in Kentucky, which appears to only be phase one of a larger plan.
We often look at communities like Moscow, Idaho, where Christians have really done a nice job doing localism.
So what's their idea of localism? Abitoy has said on podcasts that they are adhering to Kentucky's fair housing laws, but the questionnaire to get a callback is littered with hoops to jump through in order for them to judge your politics. They said they are only marketing to like-minded individuals, and it shows. I navigated my way through it on their website, and it seemed very apparent that they are trying to keep the riffraff out. Here's what I typed in to get a callback. A real estate agent out of Tennessee contacted me, and we were on the phone the next day. She reaffirmed the ideas of an ideologically aligned community and sent along a PDF and then a follow-up email that revealed their pursuit of much more land than what is currently known about. While it's not publicly revealed yet, New Founding and Ridge Runner have already acquired more land in Kentucky and now Tennessee as well, and they plan to purchase land in South Carolina and Georgia. Abitoy even tweeted this week that he woke up early to find land to buy. While previous attempts to build these kinds of settlements happened in fairly remote, off-the-grid areas, in Moscow, church leaders have been trying to evangelize a college town whose population was only 30% religious. They acquired land, businesses, and other resources while advocating for their vision of transforming America into a nation governed more closely by their own extreme socially conservative principles. Those in Moscow have been fighting Wilson's presence since he started attracting church members to move to the town to try to outgrow the already established community. It would appear Burkesville and Tompkinsville, where New Founding and Ridge Runner have this land, is next up in this movement on the Christian Nationalist front, forcing their ideology onto those living peacefully without them. The people around these areas are very apprehensive about what a project like this might mean for their community. There's the immediate rise in property values for farmers looking to acquire land in the area, or anyone else considering a move here that doesn't want to be a part of one of these planned communities. The packages they purchase have been divided up into lots with varying prices ranging from $35,000 to $60,000. In comparison, other tracts of land nearby on the Cumberland fetch about $10,000 or less for the same amount of acreage. Even with that, a few plots have already sold. If Fisher, Abitoy, and company are able to sell all of them, they could potentially make over $2 million on the project, with the adjoining acreage being used for churches, schools, whatever businesses or institutions they wish to build. The grift has consequences too. The areas around Burkesville and Tompkinsville are prime farming land, which New Founding has bought up a portion of.
We are cutting up some very large farms into smaller bits.
There have been articles written in recent years about exactly this. Wealthy venture capitalist firms buying up land in rural areas and pricing out your everyday farmers and locals. Abitoy and Fisher have doubled the price of this land in one fell swoop, now trying to sell it back to the people for a profit. While they decry BlackRock and real estate takeover companies, which are certainly their own pervasive problem, they're doing the exact same thing. You can expect more of the same wherever they go. So which is it? Grift, quiet community, Christian nationalist micronation or petri dish for domestic terrorism. New Founding and Ridge Runners stand to make a lot of money on the idea, but if it attracts the same kind of people they usually associate with, the community could easily become a beacon for hate-mongering and far-right activities, or even worse, a militaristic compound like Charles Haywood spoke of. When you spend all your time stoking the flames and then you come along and offer a refuge to get away from the fire, you are willingly creating, as you said, an ideologically aligned community, but one that's based on fear.
The people drawn to it in the community we bring together is actually what makes this distinct.
American Redoubt was a general idea of a movement, which didn't garner a lot of direct support, I think mostly due to it being non-specific, whereas the people involved in these communities have land, beliefs, and are taking action to actually settle in not only a region, but on developed properties alongside one another. People feared Redoubt because it was an attempt to collect extremists across the board in one centralized location. Who knows what will happen when you do that? When you build your entire community on fear, you can't always control how that fear manifests itself.
Jesus Christ, we invoke your name! Amen!
We are equipped and delegated by Him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy.
Look after our country, Lord, as our country starts to falter. Bring us under one nation, under God. Amen.
Hey, thanks for watching. I just wanted to shout out the incredible work that Jason Wilson has done on this topic for The Guardian. It was inspirational in me making this video. You can check some of that work out in the description below. I'm currently in Oklahoma working on my next video. I'm building something new and interesting here, and I hope you'll follow along. I'll see you on the next one.